It's very interesting to hear Chief Justice Gorsuch from the Supreme Court basically do a verbal version of the WWE on the attorney representing the school district in Maryland when they're talking about the sexualization of children as young as 4 in the Maryland School District. Take a listen.
So Pride Puppy was the book that was used for the pre-kindergarten curriculum. That's no longer in the curriculum.
That's the one where they are supposed to look for the leather and things and bondage, things like that.
It's not bondage. It's a woman in a leather.
Sex worker, right?
No, that's not correct. No.
I read it.
It's a drag queen and
drag queen and drag
correct.
queen.
The leather that they're pointing to is a woman in a leather jacket. And one of the words is drag queen in the search.
And they're supposed to look for those.
It is an option at the end of the book, correct?
Yeah.
The verbal version of the WWE that we just heard is basically Chief Justice Gorsuch telling the attorney from the school district to be honest. Stop misdirecting, stop lying, stop saying it's something other than it is. I read the book. This is clearly stated in the book. So stop saying it is anything other than it is. And I think it's long overdue that we have those blunt, honest conversations with these people on the left and the people that defend the people on the left. Before we go any further, let's first get some background on these books. How many books? What were the contents of the books? It kind of puts everything into perspective once you understand the book titles, how many of them there were, and what these kids as young as 4 were being read from these books. Take a listen to this next clip.
Again, none of these books are normal. None of this is normal. None of this was needed. We were all doing just fine until all of this woke started years ago. It all started with one book called Born Ready, the story of a boy named Penelope, which is an odd name for a boy. Turns out this is the story of a boy who transitions into a girl. Another book was called What Are Your Words? A book about pronouns, where kids don't just learn he, him pronouns, which is odd enough. They learn I, ihm, and sie, seiner. And I have absolutely no idea what that means. Next up, Intersection Allies, where we make room for all, which is a book about the smooth, gleeful entry into intersexual feminism. I've got a 6-year-old. Sounds like a good book for a 6-year-old. After that, it's The Prince in the Night, which is the story of a white prince who falls madly in love with a black knight. And they go horseback riding together in the woods. Next up, Love, Violet, the story of 2 little girls, one black, one white, who discover they are lesbians. Then we've got Uncle Bobby's Wedding, which is the thrilling tale of an interracial gay marriage, and the reception is absolutely fabulous. Then we have Jacob's New Dress, the story of a boy who dresses like a girl and wears a dress everywhere. And finally, we've got Rainbow Revolutionaries, 50 LGBTQ people who made history. I swear, when I was a kid, which was not that long ago, we read Hop on Pop. And I'm telling you, these people have completely lost their minds.
But Chief Justice Gorsuch wasn't done. And the hearing takes an interesting turn. We've heard so many times where anybody, in this case, it's an interesting cocktail of religions. You've got Christians and Muslims agreeing that what the school district is doing in English class, sexualizing small, young children, is inappropriate. And historically, the left has felt that they were justified and perfectly well and able to call such people right-wing extremists. It's just very interesting to hear that conversation making it into the Supreme Court when Chief Justice Gorsuch says, these people were labeled as such and such. It's a long time overdue. Good to hear. Take a listen.
Responding to parents who are concerned, do you agree that there was some intemperate language used?
I don't know that those were responding to parents who were concerned. This was after the fact for most of these comments. And this was in a very public setting, which obviously got heated, and some intemperate comments were used, certainly.
Yeah. And I wanted to understand your context that you were giving about the statement that some Muslim families, it's unfortunate that this issue puts some Muslim families on the same side of an issue as white supremacists and outright bigots. I think in response to Justice Sotomayor, you were trying to give some context to that.
It was interesting to hear the verbal sparks flying at the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, we have to wait until June, and I'll come up with another video when the Supreme Court makes its decision. Hopefully, the Supreme Court decides in favor of the parents. We'll have to wait and see. But in the meantime, one of the questions has to be, why are people on the left doing this? Why do people on the left think it's okay to mandate that children as young as 4 in English class, they're not reading literature, they're being read stuff that's very sexual in content. Why do they think that's okay? And at the end of the day, in my humble opinion, it comes down to power and money. And nobody better to explain that further than one of my favorite hosts on Fox News.
You have to keep asking yourself, these are smart politicians. They wouldn't, he's a billionaire. He knows how to get things done. He also knows how to find food. So we know that he's able to, he's an intelligent man. So you have to, I always say, how come for? Why such planting the flag on this thing? Because this is what their core value is the smoke screen problem. It used to be white men. In the beginning part of the pandemic, it was white men are all the problems for everything, and I actually enjoyed that a little bit. But and then now it's another thing where they say these trans kids, and and what do these poor trans kids have to deal with? The evil society. Their suicide rate is high. They can't do it. But we're not seeing any of this stuff. So I always go back to the same thing, and I feel like it's a broken record. How much money are you making off this issue? How much of our funding is going to this issue? Because it makes zero sense for any person within, even to have this argument. I could sit down, and as a matter of fact, if I sat down 2 5-year-olds, a 5-year-old little boy and a 5-year-old little girl, and I was like, how many genders are there? And they'd be like, she's a girl, ew. And I'm a boy. And then the little girl will be like, I'm a girl, and boys drool. They know. Like, this isn't hard. So you have to ask yourself, why are these educated, financially successful people doing it? Obviously, there's a way for them to make some money.
And I think Tyrus is 110% correct. He's nailed it. These people aren't doing this just because, they think it's fun. At the end of the day, money is what's driving this. Now, if somehow, some way, we can figure out how to make that money and that quest for more money and power and control go away, it will be a good thing. We'll see. But I do personally think it's long overdue that people of faith, whether they're Muslim or Christian, who are slandered and called right-wing extremists, have the right to and need to sue. They need to hold these people on the left accountable for misstating who they are and that negative effect it has on people who are Christian or Muslim and just opposed to the agenda on the left. And more to that point about people who are of faith starting to sue when they are slandered, there are cases that are actually being decided in favor of people of faith who make the stand and say, hey, this is inappropriate. You're not going to falsely label me, and you did. And therefore, I'm taking you to court, and they're winning. So I would just encourage other people out there. I'm not a huge fan of lawfare, but that's where we are. The Democrats have taken us to that point. And I have to be careful when I say Democrats. I'm talking about the far left Democrat politicians and judges. They've taken us to that point. We're there. We're in lawfare. So in my humble opinion, I think Republicans, people of faith, need to stand the ground. And if the Democrats want lawfare, we need to give them lawfare on steroids. Let me know in the comments what you think. Let's have a discussion. Do you agree with the parents that they have the right? And again, it's an interesting combination. You've got Muslim and Christian, people of very different faiths saying, hey, you're not going to get away with sexualizing my child in English class or any other class for that matter at school. It's my job to handle the sexual orientation as my child grows over and have those honest conversations with my children as they continue to grow. You don't have the right to do that in school. What do you think about that? And the other question is, and let me know in the comments, start a discussion about this too. Do you think that the Republican side needs to defend themselves through what I call lawfare on steroids, we are being slandered. We are being muzzled. I mean, you're afraid to say anything because heaven forbid somebody comes after you legally. But I have the fear, putting this out on YouTube, is somebody going to say I'm hateful, therefore I get in trouble? Hopefully not. I'm not trying to be. Just want the conversation. But if it does happen, what do you think about people on the right, conservatives, people of faith, taking the people that have falsely labeled them to court? My version of lawfare on steroids. Let me know what you think in the comments. And as always, until next time, God bless. Love you all.